Okay, so the idea is will be to create so whenever a user will create or import a data set, that the combo box will automatically update itself. And when a user deletes a channel, this will also update. Okay, and this will be a good demonstration of callbacks. So this combo box, I've added it, and I can give it a name. So let's say combo box channels. And as you know, now we need to rerun the batch file. And I'm okay. And now in Python, I can go into my main form and start implementing the logic for the combo box. Okay. Okay. So the ORS events, for the callbacks, we have a class for this, and let's see, it's in the ORS event package, and you want the event callback module, and you want to import the event callback class. So if you go to the declaration, and then click on structure, and the structure of event callback. These are all the callbacks that you can add to your classes. Sorry, these are all the callbacks that you can add to specific events. So you can, yeah. So the callbacks are self-explanatory. So sometimes we can mark slices, and there's a callback for that when it's modified. I guess the other ones are the ones that are more interesting, like that we've learned, are like the callback. There's a callback for when the window leveling, either the 2D or the 3D, has changed. When an object has been deleted, an overlay opacity is changed. Callback pre. And these callbacks, these are for instance, for object instance, because the name is just add callback, and then the event. So these are the instance callbacks, and then there are fewer class callbacks. You can, for the class callbacks, there's only like object deleted or published or propagate. When the data is propagated, when a propagate data dirty event, so these 4 or 5 class callbacks, or when the visibility of an object has changed. And finally, there's a list of global callbacks for when for these different types of events. Okay, so if we want to Are you guys okay? Do you have a... Did you guys find it? Um, right, so the ones we want to use today are the class callbacks for publishing and deleting of objects. So there's object published and object deleted for class callbacks. Okay, so these are the two that we want to use. And so these two will, so when we will install a callback on our objects, our functions will be called, and it should update our combo box. Okay. So in Python, for the callbacks, okay, let's see. Okay, so do you guys know what a callback is? Yeah. Okay. So a callback is basically a function. So we want to define two callbacks. The first one is the data or channel published callback, and the argument it takes is an event data. And the other one is the channel deleted callback. Okay. Okay. And we need to import one more package. It's called weak reference or weak ref. Okay, so in Python, usually we don't have to worry about allocating memory and deallocating memory. This is done automatically for you. But in this case, for the callbacks, well, actually, okay, I'll come back to this in a moment. Okay, so and then to install the callbacks onto the classes, we need to know we need to get the class from our model. So we can import from the ORS model.ors import channel. And by importing the channel, we can install a class callback on this class. Okay. So to to install a callback, you use the event callback class, and then you add a callback, add class callback on object published. Okay. And the arguments are the prog ID, a callback ID, and a function. So in ORS, for our classes, the prog ID is always its class name. So the name of our classes is not simply channel, but it's usually something like CXV channel or CXV something. But you don't need to worry about that. There is a get class name static that will return you the class program ID. The callback ID, the callback ID needs to be unique because this is how we can identify your callback. So at ORS, we normally just use the name of the plugin. So here, the name of the plugin is demo plugin. And then usually we write, so it has to be a string. So we write the name of the plugin with an underscore and followed by the type. So this is object published event. And finally, the function that we need to implement, the add the channel published callback. When you add a callback, it's important to keep a reference. When you add a callback, it will return you an object. So if you go to the event callback class and you look at the main form. So if you go to if you go to the definition of this function, go to declaration, it will return you a callback class event data. And it's important to keep a handle to this object, because once this object is deleted, the callback is also deleted. And so we usually just keep it inside a list. You can also keep it inside a dictionary if you like, but list or dictionary is fine. And so the other one that we need to add is the event callback for the object deletion. Object deleted. So the prog ID is the same. It's channel.getClassName static. the ID will be the name of the plugin, followed by the what it is, by the type. So this is a object deleted event. And and finally the callback itself. So it's channel deleted callback. And since you can have multiple instances of the same plugin, we usually add the ID of the current object. So the ID of self. So to do this, so the ID of the object is basically its memory address. So if I type, if I add, like, if I do, ID is a Python function for returning the memory address of the object. And so so if you have multiple plugins, then this is guaranteed to be unique. Okay, anyone have any questions? Yeah.
Dictionary classified for inside
Like
this file dot callback is dictionary is belong to some function or class.
Here. Okay, this self.callbacks is a instance. It's yeah. So like in C++, you usually use this. In Python, you use self. And when you are in the constructor, so the class constructor in Python is __init. This is very important to know. Okay, I guess I forgot to mention this. The destructor in Python is del __del. Oops. This is the destructor in Python. Oops. And super, it's a built-in function to access the parent class. So here there's only one parent class, ORS abstract window. So that means that super when you call super will refer to the ORS abstract window. I just want to just see if there's another one. Also in, okay, I guess, also on a side note, in Python, you can define the same function multiple times. So sometimes you'll make a programming mistake and actually implement the same function twice. So this is okay. Well, maybe not for del, but for any function for any other function name that's not like the standard Python. You can have these two defined, but in Python it will only take the last one. So sometimes if you copy paste code and you don't pay attention, then you might run into the situation and not understand why your code is not running. But it's because because there might be a second function that you have in your class. Okay, so I will just remove this, or yeah, this was just more to explain the structure and the constructor. Okay. Yeah, and so this is the instance variable that belongs to the instance. Okay. Okay, so now we need to implement these two functions. Okay, so here, since so when we okay, and event data actually okay, so here PyCharm was able to understand that this event data variable name is actually a variable of type event data. So in the event data, if I go to its class, so I can't follow. Okay, so you can import it as well. I think it's in here. Event, no. Okay, wait. So it's from ORS event data. Okay, so in the event data, if you look at its structure, and only for this class, you have all the information about the callback. So you can get the object that triggered it. Or maybe is it sorted? Get. Yeah, so we can ask for the originator object. And this will return the object that caused the callback. So this means that if I come here, when a channel is published for this and this callback is called, I can obtain the channel that's been published by asking for get originator object. Get originator object and channel. And I can add it. So now that the channel's been published, or now that I have the channel object, I can get its title. So we can create a variable and call it channel get title. And finally, I can add it to my combo box. So here, in this subfunction, channel published callback, I can get the variables from outside the scope. So here, self is still valid, and I can access the user interface, and I can have access to the combo box. If you look in the Qt documentation, there is a method to add an item, and what we want to add is channel title. And when you add an item, you can also add data to it. In Python, you can add sorry. In Python, you can add any object, and usually we just add the unique ID, which is the channel's global unique ID. Okay. Okay, so for now, maybe I can restart the application and show what we've just done. Okay. Okay. So now if I open my widget, okay, I have an error. Okay, so this I was not supposed to implement. Okay, so okay, so here in this case, I will use the re-importer tool and search for my demo plugin. And I can re-import the main form. So now I have another error. So so now it's saying that I have another mistake, and it's saying that this is a number and this is a string, and I cannot add them together. So you can convert it to a string. and I can re-import. Okay, so now it's here. Okay, so now my combo box is empty. So if I load some data, now my combo box is has one new item. Okay. Okay, so in Python, okay, so in Python, when I use a self here, this will create a circular reference to between the object and the method, this submethod. And what this means is that this self object can never be deleted by Python because someone will always have a reference to it. And so to prevent that, what you need to do is actually obtain a weak reference to it. And a weak reference is it's kind of like a pointer, but it will not hold a reference. It will not hold a hard reference. Like it will allow Python to delete the object because it's not directly referring to it. Does that make sense? Okay. Do you guys understand? So instead of so what we can do is create the weak reference before the callback. So in ORS, we usually call it weak self. And weak self is based, and we can create a weak reference to self using the weak ref package. And then we can get the real self again from weak self and trying to call it. And if the self object was not deleted, then myself will be a valid object. If not, myself will be none. So we only want to execute this callback when myself is not none. And we need to replace self with myself. Okay. Similarly for the deleted, for when a channel is deleted, it's very similar, so we can copy this part for the deletion. And to remove an item from the combo box, there are two ways. So for now, I will use self just for the auto completion. So it's combo box channels dot remove item, and the item is the index for which the item is in. So first, we actually need to find it within our combo box. So you can find it using this combo box channels in the index. Dot find data, and what you want to find is the unique identifier for the channel, because this was the data that we gave it earlier. And actually, you don't need this channel title for the deletion. And the item I want to remove is this index. Oops. Okay. So for the plugin,
Maybe explain to show all of
okay.
So on line 35, you have to use myself instead.
Yeah, exactly. And I guess also line 34.
Oh.
Okay. With PyCharm, when you select the word, you can also press Alt-J. I'm not sure if it's going to be the same for everyone, but if you try it, if it works, what it should do is highlight multiple times, like highlight the next word with the same, it will basically search what you've selected and add you another cursor. And so you can edit multiple lines at the same time. I think this is a really cool feature with PyCharm. Okay. Okay. Yeah.
If we forget to add a weak leg,
it will work. The problem is sometimes, so what will happen is that this will never be deleted. And sometimes when you close your plugin, your widget is still active because it hasn't been deleted. And since this hasn't been deleted, the callbacks will still be triggered. And sometimes if a programmer is not careful, if you don't do this, like the what might happen is that then the combo box might be deleted and it might still trigger. But then like the Python version, it still exists, but not the C++ version. And you might get like an error because you're trying to access invalid memory. The other thing is that we found that happens most often is if you do this all the time in all of your callbacks, then you have a lot more callbacks that get triggered than normal, and then this can slow down the application because you're triggering too many callbacks that you don't need to. So that's what can happen if you don't use the weak ref. Yeah. Okay, so so for this, I will close the widget with the X. So this will close it, and if all the instances of the plugin is cleared, if there's no more instances of that class or module, then the reimporter will work. So here I can reimport my main form, and now if I open my plugin again, currently it's empty because I haven't created any new data sets. So if I import one, now my comma box has one item, and now if I delete it, it should disappear. So this is our callback system. To get the current to get okay, yeah. So as you can see, currently there is a bug that if I already had a data set that's loaded, then it does not appear. So we can fix that. So in our constructor for our widget, when we initialize, after we initialize the combo box, we can add channels to it to add the pre-existing channels. Okay, so to get all of the channels that are currently in the program, all of the objects of the same class, we can ask the channel class get all instances And PyCharm is not able to autocomplete this. And it will say that it's unresolved attribute. But in fact, this is a valid method. If you go to the if you go to the developer documentation, there is a get all instances, and this is defined in managed, which is the parent class of channel. So even though PyCharm is not aware of it, this is a valid method. So here I have all of my channels in this variable. And so this is a good example of why the developer documentation is important. Because some of the methods, if you just rely on the auto completion, you may not see everything. Okay, so yeah. Yeah, so we can do something similar like this to add our channels to our combo box. So here, channels is going to be a list of all available channels in the application. So if I iterate over this list, I can get its title by doing the same call, channel.getTitle, and I can add it to my combo box. Channels.add item, channel title, and its unique identifier. Okay. Okay, so our objects, they also have a state to determine whether we should show it to the user in the list or not. And this parameter is called representable. Because sometimes you may need an object, for example, a channel for temporary calculations, and you don't want it to show, you don't necessarily want to show it to the user. And so this state is useful for telling Dragonfly that if an object is representable, show it to the users. If it's not representable, don't show it. So in our combo box, we need to check for this, because if not, then you will see all of the temporary channels that we use internally in our software. So we need to add this extra check for if the channel is representable. Get is representable. And okay, so now if I close this, and close it, re-import. Now when I open it, it already has my walnut that I have added. If I don't add this check, re-import. Oh, wait, did it re-import? Okay, well, right now I don't have any other channels, so that's why it shows the same thing. But if I, for example, open so currently I don't have a good example, but it's always better to have this extra check here. Otherwise, it may show you might see other temporary channels that you don't intend to see in here. Okay, so another callback that is so for now, okay, so I guess if I open this again, if I change a property, say like the title, I've changed the title here, but this is not updated. So when so when the property of an object changes, there's another callback, or there's another event that is emitted, and you can listen for this event as well. So there's property callbacks. So you can add one for channel properties 30 callback, and it's the same signature. It takes in event data. And so now, and I need to find the same index. I need to find the index for the channel in my combo box. And if this channel, if you read it, if you read the documentation for find data, index can return a negative value. So if a value is negative, it means it did not find it. So maybe we should add an extra safety check that index is greater or equal to 0. And similarly down here. if index greater than equal to 0. And so here we want to update the combo box and not add an object. So I'm using self temporarily to have the auto completion. So it's combo box channels dot set item data. Okay. So the index, the parameter, the first parameter is the index. The second one is what you want to set. So I want to set the channel title. So the channel title is channel.getTitle. And finally, I only want to set what is shown and then not change the data. So Qt has a special let's see, if I go back, set item data. Qt has its own macros and enums for like specific integer values, and you can access this from Python by importing the required package. So it's in Qt core and just Qt. And here we want to set the role to the display role. Okay, and the import, in case you missed it, is in Qt core. You can import the extra package Qt. Yeah, so if I close my plugin and re-import it, now when I open it, okay, so this is now title, and I can now change my, oh wait, I guess I just realized I never installed a callback, so it won't change anything. So I have to add a new callback, and it's event callback dot add class callback. Okay, so it's property dirty events, and it's the same syntax. So it's channel dot get class names that static and add a unique ID. And the type is not object deleted, but properties dirty. And the function to call is channel property dirty's callback. Okay. So now, when I go back to Dragonfly, I can close my plugin, re-import it, and open my widget again. And so now if I change the title, new title, it updates. Because now we're listening to this property dirty callback. And so for our callbacks, we have different different signatures that you can listen to, or different types of events. We have, maybe this is not the best place. If I go to event callback and go to the structure, we can listen for like if the data is dirty, such as channels when you modify it, or the geometry. So if you change the shape or size of a data set, and sometimes you want to be notified when the visibility changes. Okay, so that's the okay. So this covers the event callbacks for our ORS model. So just to recap, we added a combo box that will list all of the available channels. And when they are deleted, it will disappear from the list. And when you import a new data set, they will be added to this list. And when we change its title, it will new title. It will appear in the combo box with the new title. Okay. So in the last yesterday, we talked a bit about the Python syntax, and we did a bit of introduction to Python. We talked about creating a menu item and how to we developed a new feature and add-on for Dragonfly. Next week, I can upload it to the Infinite Toolbox, and so that your users can download it and use it, or use it yourself as well. I also talked about how to integrate C++ libraries into Python. And today, we talked about the UI design and how to use the interest in Dragonfly, how to use callbacks this afternoon. So we covered a lot of the basics for Dragonfly development. So if you guys have any questions, please let me know. And if not, you can always email me and send me questions. I think you all have my business card. So that concludes our workshop.